I wish I could talk to her someday, even though I know that I probably will never be able to talk to her because I am I'm not that cool of a person. Hey guys, what's up? It's the Culture Detective here investigating your favorite albums, and today I'm going to talk about another amazing album, a masterpiece, an album that I consider a masterpiece. And that is of course Iceage, Plowing into the Field of Love. So Iceage is a band from Denmark. They are a punk rock band who had made two very abrasive, chaotic, and dark, and depressive, and despondent punk rock albums before this one. That is a New Brigade and You're Nothing. But this album, they're taking on a more instrumental directed direction where they incorporate more acoustic instrumentals, also more melodies, also sweeter chord progressions, but this still doesn't take the gruffness and the roughness and the chaos that their music usually has. Thus, we have this really interesting combination of musical styles that are very unique, and I am honestly super duper impressed with this album. In my opinion, this is one of the most unique rock albums I have ever encountered, and this is definitely one of the best rock albums of the decade, period. What I really love about the performances on this album is that they are really sloppy, as well as chaotic, but also on this album specifically, very sloppy. And not because they are bad musicians, but because this is the style of the album. Everything about this album is so emotionally drained and so desperate. It's so full of turmoil and agony. And the sloppy instrumentals, the drunken instrumentals, just adds on to the pain and the numbness. And I love the vocals on this album. Hopefully I'm not butchering his name, but it's Elias van der Groenenveld, and his vocals are so desperate, so crushed, so drained of life force. It's crushing. Yeah. I also really love the chord progressions on this album. They are incredibly unique, as they are not chord progressions you would hear every day. They are actually pretty odd and pretty strange at times. And they also experiment with dynamic and shifts. So you may think that this song will run this chord progression throughout the entire song, but then a few seconds later it's gonna shift entirely, and not like a key change or anything, but like the last note of the first chord progression is gonna lead to the second set of chords, and it's going to sound and feel different even though it's of the similar range of musical notes, if you know what I mean. And one other thing that I would like to talk about the album before I start off talking about every single track is the lyrics. All of the songs on this album feature some really poetic, beautiful, and powerful, but also soul-crushing lyrics that are very impressive, because none of the members in the band actually speak English as their first language, and yet the lyrics, my goodness, my goodness, they're good. So, without further ado, this album starts off with On My Fingers, which instrumentally isn't all that catchy, flashy, or exciting or epic as an album opener, but this is a great start for the album, almost a perfect start for this album, because this is such a great tone setter with its scratchy, bright guitars, the marchy drums. It feels like the song is telling us to, or more like bringing us to a conquest into some of the most disturbed yet beautiful and poetic emotions there are in the world. But this song also sounds kinda like the title of the album, Plowing into the Field of love. And instead of like Field of Love, more like Field of Emotions, Field of really dramatic, extreme emotions. We're just plowing into it. We're entering it really slowly but surely with its rigid progressions and its emotional desperations. I also really like the noisy chorus and the shift in tempo and tone in the chorus and the ending of the track. The whole thing is just very brilliant. Uh, and of course, we have the second track, The Lord's Favorite, and this is a special track because they sort of combine this rockabilly country style music with their usual chaotic post-punk music, and they go together really, really well. This song is so just smooth sounding. It just runs through the whole thing like a horse on a field, and it's just amazing. Not only is it super catchy and fun, but it's also one of the most impressively written rock ragers of the decade, in my opinion. I really love the scratchy, prickly guitars, and on the bridge, the constantly banging drums and the vocals. They are just ecstatic. They are amazing. Yes, ecstatic is the right word here. 100 euro wine. I don't believe in. The next track, How Many, is an incredibly stunning and stellar off-kiltered rock songs with these icy stern guitar chords and these really chaotic but also orchestral pianos that sound like they are trying to reach the stars but they're failing every time, so they keep on trying. And the chorus, it just suddenly changes in tempo and tone, and it sounds triumphant. It sounds larger than life. And I really love how at the end of each chorus it just pauses a bit, and Elias just breaks down, how many, and then the song just resumes. I mean, I just love the chorus of the track. Every time it comes on, I just feel like I'm racing to heaven. And then we have the third track where we really just plunge back down to the ground with the track Glassy-Eyed, Dormant, and Veiled. This track is essentially a very sad, despondent, theatrical heartbreaker with its really rainy, cold, and European flavored guitars. Yes, European flavored. The guitars on this track sound like a really rainy, foggy, cloudy day in somewhere like Amsterdam where everyone's just lost interest in their lives, just crippling and strolling on the streets with no more purpose in life whatsoever, with the brown and pale yellow and dark yellow buildings that are kind of tilted, glooming over your heads as you're gazing upon the clouds. This is what the guitars on this track sound like. Yes, they are very emotive, very poetic, and very springy and stingy as well. The lyrics are very despondent. They talk about confronting your father, which is a very symbolic thing to talk about, in my opinion. I also really like the downtrodden horns. And afterwards, we have the track Stay, which has these very beautiful sunburnt, lonesome guitars and some really low-pitched performance from Elias. And the instrumentals on this track, they are very sinister but also very luscious and beautiful at the same time. It's like I'm traveling into this hidden, obscured chateau in France, in the middle of nowhere, in like a fairy tale or something, except something dark and bloody and gruesome is happening over there, and I still haven't known it yet. I also really like the chorus where everything just speeds up a little bit, but yeah, this album really gives me the feels, you know? Yeah, the chateau. I'm just strolling the garden where the flowers and their thorns are stained with thick blood. Afterwards, we have the track Let It Vanish, which is one of the lower points on the album. It's relatively blander than any other tracks on the album, and it's more chaotic and rough and gruff. But still, it's not that bad. I still enjoy the marchy drums and the off-kiltered, disoriented chords. It's just that they don't have as much dynamic as other tracks on the album, and the vocals do feel kind of aimless. However, the next track, Abundant Living, is a total banger. It's wild, it's aggressive, it has these bold, thunderous guitar riffs that sound like a smash between mandolin, pianos, and guitars. Bam, 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 bam. The opening is very springy. We also get these very bold, smashed in the teeth pianos, and the performance in the gaslights fire. The instrumentals on this track, they just strike very sharply. And we also have the track Forever, which is another really slow, painful, depressing track with a really odd chord progression. It's like, usually how chords, like four-parted chord progressions go, when at first it gives you this setting and then it has this sourness to it, and then on the third note it begins to hit its climax at its most sour, and then on the fourth chord it just resolves it. And on this track we hit the third note where it's at its most sour and depressing, and then we keep going, and it becomes more urgent as well, and tense as well. I think that's really brilliant. And the ending with the climactic horns, it's really amazing as well. Also, we have the track Cimmerian Shade, which is also one of the noisier tracks on the album. It's essentially this really clunky, rough industrial punk song. The instrumentals here are so sinister, so evil, and the rhythms are so odd, but yet so really well strung out, really well performed. It's amazing. Anyway, we have the track Against the Moon, which is a track inspired by this painting where a guy pisses against the moon. Thus, we have the chorus, pissing against the moon. Bum, 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 bum. This is a very beautiful, gorgeous, eerie, ethereal ballad with these drunken, defeated horns and these very beautiful, like moon white, glistening piano's arpeggios. Yeah, moon white. It's like white, but not a clean kind of white, but the crystally kind of white. And these swelling, serene strings that are just so beautiful and emotional. The lyrics are very beautiful, and the whole track is just extremely gorgeous. And we also have the second last track on the album. And you know how usually rock albums put their tamest and their mildest song as their second last track before the very epic closing? But Iceage pretty much counters that with quite possibly the wildest and the craziest track on the entire album, Simony, or Simony, which is this really intense, heated rager. We get these prickly guitars that are really wild and angry, the descending chords, the descending bass line of the thing is just kick-ass. It just makes you heat up. I just hit my fingers. Ow. The drums are violently banging, and the whole track feels very challenging and summery and spicy. And the chorus, the wild vocals, and how it just drags down the whole song before it builds momentum again. It's just brilliant. Bam 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 bam. Simony. And then we have the last track, which is the title track, and boy, what a great ending. An epic album closer. That is very heavy-hearted with the downtrodden chords, but it just sounds very solid. Finally a moment of stability until the very end where it still becomes chaotic. Which is actually great, and I think the song is a really strong goodbye, a really strong conclusion for the album. A great album ending indeed. So overall, I think this is a magnificent album that just gets better and better upon every listen. And again, I'll say it again, it's one of the most unique albums I've ever heard in the decade, and it just gives you the feels. You just feel things and see things you probably haven't seen or felt before while listening to the album. Thus, I think this album is really special. And yeah, my favorite track here, the Lord's favorite. My least favorite track here, Let It Vanish. I am giving Iceage's Plowing into the Field of Love a strong, 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 strong 9 out of 10. Very close to a 10. Very close. So, have you listened to this album? From 1 to 10, how much did you rate it? Like if you like it, and subscribe if you want more, and thanks for watching.